Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next session. This talk is going to be focused on magic systems. Now, I'm sure many of us here could talk for hours upon hours upon hours about magic systems, so this is probably something we'll revisit in the future. But for now, I want to dive in and talk a little about it. Of course, it's fun to go around and just have people say a magic system in some form of media, whether it's a TV show, movie, anime, book, whatever it is that they enjoy. So go ahead, everybody. What's one that you like? What's a fave magic system?
I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here and pick one of Brandon Sanderson's books. He is sort of known as the grandmaster of magic systems in fantasy, but I'm not picking the obvious ones. I'm giving myself that much at least. I am going to go with The Rhythmatist, which is one of his YA novels. The magic is based in chalk drawings, which feels super cool because it's just a little bit to the left of what you might expect. And because chalk is so ephemeral and so easy to erase, it opens up all sorts of possibilities. He does a great job always, but especially in this case, of giving you enough rules to make it interesting and to put some interesting constraints on the magic without overburdening you with here are all of the minutia of how this works. And that one sort of hit the sweet spot for me.
I actually opened it up for everyone to answer because I just want to see who was going to respond the fastest. Saying, I didn't call anyone specifically. I wanted to see who was going to say it. But please continue, Audrey.
I really love simple ideas that you can mess around a lot with. One of my favorites is a series I read a few years ago. It's Neil Shusterman's Everlast series. It's about a world full of ghost children. And the world consists entirely of objects that people love that have died. So if I really love this water bottle and someone smashes it into a million pieces, the water bottle shows up in their world. And they do a lot of interesting things with that about what's loved and what isn't. So they have records in their world, but they don't have record players, and they have CDs but no CD players because people don't actually love technology. They just want to upgrade to the next best thing, but they do love their music. And they take the simple idea, but the longer they use it, the more they figure out how to mess with it. So they're all ghosts, and they figure, well, we can't kill anybody if we don't like them, but we can unkill them. So the worst case scenario is they unkill somebody and they bring the villain back to life, and she's just screwed for a couple chapters. She does not like not being a ghost anymore.
I'll go ahead and go next. If any of you are tuning in for the first time, my name is Mason. If you're not, I said it anyways.
His name's still Mason.
And I'm still here. I'm still me. For better or worse, he says, with a creeping existential dread in the back of his mind. On a happier note, my favorite magic, I'm gonna do the controversial thing here. And I'm gonna say I really love magic in The Lord of the Rings. I'm gonna be the guy, you know. I think particularly in today's fantasy genre, we see a lot of hard magic systems and a lot of soft kind of exhaustion-based magic systems. But I really like how Tolkien's magic kind of evokes similar atmosphere as old legends and folk tales and things like that. Rightfully so, right? Because that was the source material that inspired Tolkien's writings. I really dig those vibes. I like the idea of magic kind of being wondrous and a little bit beyond reach. So I like Lord of the Rings magic.
Well, very cool. Thank you, everyone, for sharing some of your favorites. Mine is, I'm going to go with Demon Cycle in terms of book series. I like it because it's got, for those who aren't familiar, demons basically rise every night and people have to hide behind various wards. But what I like about the magic system is it starts with something that's just very sort of survival based, kind of on the fringes, but then the way people realize how to use that magic develops and changes over time. And so I like sort of being there with them, getting to discover with them these new ways of using something that they've been using before. So I think that's a really cool thing that happens in that. I'm also wearing a Naruto shirt, so you can't see it, but it is Kakashi. Anyway, point here that I'm trying to make is that I think another cool thing that magic systems can do is that they can create very individualized characters where different people have the ability to do like different types of magic. And that becomes part of like who they are and how you know them, how you identify them, which can help with larger casts. So that's just like another little one I'm tossing out there. But today we want to not only talk about some of our favorites, but talk about, as Mason actually already brought up, the ideas of hard and soft magic systems. For anybody out there that's done some reading about magic systems or heard people talk about magic systems, that's pretty much the way that they are discussed. And so just a quick background for anyone who does not know, a hard magic system is one that has more hard and fast rules, whereas a soft magic system is just that, more kind of open-ended. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages to both. A hard magic system, some of the advantages are, and something that Brandon likes to talk about, he is very much known for his hard magic systems. The advantage of a hard magic system is if it has rules, if it has things that are set, it can be used for solutions in a way that can feel justified because we can learn earlier on how a magic system works. We can then see someone use said magic system in a particular way that maybe you weren't fully expecting. But when you think back, you're like, oh yeah, no, I could see how that could work. And it justifies how characters solve a particular problem. That is, of course, not the only way to use a hard magic system, but that is one of its benefits. The downside could potentially be construed that you have to spend time talking about the hard magic system and what the rules are and work that into the narrative. Plus, for some people, learning all the nuts and bolts feels more like, you know, a video game or doesn't feel as mystical or magical as it could otherwise be. Of course, we have this whole offshoot of Lit RPG where that's exactly what people want to read. But soft magic system, it retains some of that magical quality because we don't know what's going to happen. But then at the same time, if you're using that to solve like a big issue or something, it could feel like, you know, just hand of God coming in and just taking care of it. And that is justified. So those are just some quick definitions. I'd love to hear from you all what you prefer to write, or if you like doing a combination of the two. What's your personal preference as a writer?
Yeah. Okay. Literally everyone tunes in to go first. I'm gonna go ahead and say that usually mine lean towards soft, right? Which probably maybe informs why I picked Lord of the Rings on some level. Particularly in the sci-fi series that I'm currently working on, even though it's not magic, right? It's certainly not hard sci-fi, right? Very loosely defined abilities and things like that. And I think what Jeff said earlier is a key point about soft magic, and I won't go off on this too long because other people have thoughts, and it's not just me. But I think a big key thing about soft magic is to make sure that it is not the immediate solution to everyone's problems, right? Going back to Lord of the Rings, since I referenced it earlier and I mentioned it a couple of times, a lot of people have a hard time with the Eagles, you know? You get videos like how Lord of the Rings should have ended and things like that, where it's just like fly the Eagles over Mount Doom, drop the ring, and bam, no struggle, you know? Boom. Even though, like, you know, the average Tolkien scholar can give you a good hour-long sermon on why that could never happen, to the average Joe, you run the risk of if your magic solves those solutions, solves those problems, I should say.
Eagles a hard magic system within the soft magic system?
Within the soft?
Seems like their rules are pretty well defined. But anyway.
It could be. It could be. It could be. And I think an important thing is like there can be rules in soft magic, right? But just maybe not as hard and fast and very few, right? Medieval rules for dealing with fairies were don't make deals with them and throw iron, right? But that doesn't always solve every issue, and sometimes people get tricked into solving deals, and then like, what do, you know? So I think there can be rules and still be soft, but I think there's a line there. I don't know. Anyway, that's my spiel. I can keep going if anyone wants me to.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think Mason hits on a really important point that even if you're writing a soft magic system, you need rules for why you can't solve every problem you're faced with. I watched 7 seasons of Once Upon a Time, which I love. I do love it, but dear mercy, they just bring so many people back from the dead. So when someone needs to stay dead, it didn't convince me. Like they resolved the love triangle at one point by killing off a love interest. Like, oh, okay, he'll be out for a couple episodes. Wait, holding a funeral. Okay, they're talking about the guy like he's not coming back. Do we see the last of this guy? And there's just no solid reason when we should. And it gets to the point where the other love interest dies and they just go to the underworld and get him back and say hi to the guy while they're there. He's like, nah, it's okay. I resolved all my life issues. I died a happy man. I'm just going to move along now. And the most interesting thing about magic systems is what it can do or how it's affecting your everyday life. And so you really can't use magic as a cop-out.
My preference so far has been to err on the side of hard magic a little bit. I think it is worth calling out that this isn't necessarily a dichotomy, but rather a sliding scale, right? You can be somewhere in the middle, and I think most authors probably are. There's very few authors who are going to drown you in the minutia of their magic systems, and very few who are just going to be okay with nothing but hand waving. That being said, I do like to set up rules for my magic system and make them pretty transparent because, like I was talking about earlier, it does some really interesting things in allowing your characters to be clever and apply those rules in new and interesting ways that you haven't thought about. But one thing that springs to mind for me as I think about this, I don't want to discount the value of soft magic systems, because they really do preserve that sense of awe and wonder in a way that the hard magic systems can't. You do get some authors who just cheat and give you both, right? I'm thinking of Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, where you actually have a variety of different magic systems, some of which are exhaustively discussed, and he does give you all the minutiae, and you do sort of want to stab out your eyes, sorry. But then you have other magic systems. So oh shoot, I've forgotten the name of it now. The Sigildry, and there's a couple of others.
Talking about sympathy magic?
Sympathy, yeah, that's I was blanking on it. That's all really well discussed, and it's really crunchy. It's really hard magic system. But in that same book, you also have naming, which is about as soft as it comes. There's very few rules, and it just is sort of the impossible happening, and it's trying to capture lightning in a bottle. And I think he was smart to do both, because both give you things that the other ones don't. Why restrict yourself to just one?
I do hear that. I like the way you called it cheating. I like to cheat if possible when it comes to this subject. Don't get me wrong, I am definitely a just overall magic system junkie personally. In many cases, I create the magic system for a world before I make the world or the characters or anything. That's why I end up having so many different worlds, because I'm like so many different magic systems. But as been said, it's nice if you can have some of both, because there is some true wonder and mystery and that questioning of that. How does it work? And I can't just go to a magic class to find out how it works. You know what I mean? So having some of both, I think, in a story is delightful to a reader. Obviously, of course, it does depend on your audience. If we are looking at lit RPG, I think you're going to be better served with a hard magic system because people want to think about min-maxing, how they would do it, what they would choose, so on and so forth. And we also see that with a decent number of fantasy books. I'm honestly kind of surprised that there aren't more people writing hard magic systems due to the popularity of Brandon Sanderson. But then, of course, every now and then you'll see well, not every now and then, you'll see a decent number of Reddit posts, someone being like, okay, what's not a hard magic system? Give me a soft magic system. But I feel like there are a decent number of fantasy books that don't have a great deal of magic, because it is a lot to figure out if you're going to dive deeply into it and start using it. So anyway, that's my not so quick take on if you can have both, I think it's pretty cool. I think one final thing to recognize is what you like to read may not be exactly what you like to write. I've been discovering that more and more, the more I work through and the more I do things. I'm like, wait a second, this isn't normally what I would spend tons of time reading, but I think maybe I like first person more than I thought I did initially, or I think I'm liking a little bit of soft magic in this more than I thought I would, so on and so forth. So just be open and you may surprise yourself. Obviously in this, we haven't given a huge roadmap of how to start doing your magic systems. So are there any final thoughts that we'd like to give our viewers about magic systems and our experimentation?
Yeah.
One more.
Oh,
sorry,
you
Mason.
go, Cameron.
One more quick plug for soft magic systems. If you look at some of the most popular fantasy novels around, they're soft magic systems. George R. R. Martin, soft magic. J.R.R. Tolkien, as we already discussed, soft magic. J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter series, super soft. So there's certainly a place for it. And a lot of times really what people are looking for is just that sense of wonder.
Yeah, yeah. And while J.K. Rowling's been mentioned, I think it should be discussed that whether you're doing soft or hard, like we've talked about, there will probably be some level of rules involved or some guidelines that you give. If you give those, don't break them. Just find creative ways to use them, right? I remember toward the end of our time in the Harry Potter series, toward the end of the book, when wands started doing things everyone was like, they could never do that. And then there's the whole is love magic discussion and things like that. Toward the start of the series, it seemed like there were rules, right? And then at the end, increasingly, she seemed to be hinting toward what if there are no rules kind of thing, right? And I remember as a reader just kind of being like, what, you set up the world to be a way and then just in order to fix it, say, oh, it was never that way. It felt cheap. And I think it goes back to that whole Deus Ex Machina thing, right? If you shatter all of the preconceptions of your reader in order to solve your character's problems, that doesn't always feel fulfilling. In fact, it usually doesn't.
Yeah, I can feel why did I invest in this particular world and way of thinking for so long? And it does present you as a writer a creative opportunity to think about, okay, how can I get out of this place I've written myself into, so on and so forth. But then that can be a really rewarding moment, assuming you do figure out a way around it. If not, we may need to change some things. But yeah, I think part of what Mason's getting at here, and I would certainly agree with, is if there is this chance to dig deeper into your current magic system and ask some questions, also like Erica has been talking about too, with the book she was reading, and they kept bringing in these new things and thinking more about it and doing more with it. That can be just really rewarding to get to live in that world and really see what is that world like. For me as a reader, I always get excited when the author includes some extra little, just almost nothing bit about the magic, but shows me that they've thought about how that magic would affect regular people in their daily lives and the economy or something else, and be like, oh yeah, this feels like a world that's real, that was thought about. Erica, do you have any last things before we wrap up this session?
Nope, I'm good to go.
All right, cool. I just want to check. Like I said, everyone, there was so much we could talk about with magic systems. Hopefully this was a nice little primer, especially giving our perspective on things. As always, we hope this helps you as a writer. And if there's anything you're curious about or would like to hear us talk more about magic systems or otherwise, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, until next time, Blockheads.